Welcome back to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. We are back with our fire department, and we are going straight into their presentation.
Good evening, Council President Cohen, Chairperson McCray, and honorable members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Chief James Wallace. I'm Chief of the Baltimore City Fire Department, and I'm honored to present the fiscal year 2027 recommended budget for the Baltimore City Fire Department. Every day, the men and women of this department serve on the front lines of public safety. They respond to our emergencies, they build trust in communities, protect vulnerable residents, and they help create safer neighborhoods across the city. What we present to you tonight reflects their work, their dedication, and the direction we are taking this department in fiscal year 2027. This budget takes a balanced and strategic approach focused on reimagining proactive service delivery while maintaining the strong reactive response capabilities our residents depend on during emergencies. This investment advances the administration priorities of enhancing public safety, equitable neighborhood investment, accountable government, and operational excellence. Every fire prevented, every life saved, every community stabilized after a tragedy, and every resident connected to care is a direct contribution to the safer, stronger, and more vibrant Baltimore this administration is building. This budget makes targeted investments that advance that vision while preserving the strong emergency response capabilities our residents have come to depend on. Historically, fire departments have been measured almost exclusively by how fast they arrive when something goes wrong. That standard does still matter, and your Baltimore City Fire Department is meeting that standard. But the public safety environment has changed, and this department is changing with it. FY2027 expands our investment in fire prevention, education, EMS community outreach, inspection and code enforcement, and the use of data to identify risk before it becomes crisis. These are not additions to our mission, they are evolutions of it. The progress you will hear about tonight, declining fire fatalities, expanded community health programs, a stronger and more diverse workforce, multiple training classes running simultaneously at our fire academy, our new nurse navigation program meeting residents at the point of need, and the clearboarding program that we're very proud of did not happen by chance. It is a direct result of a data-driven, intentional, and forward-thinking approach that has moved this department from reactive to proactive community care. I want to take a minute to recognize the people who make this department what it is. Our firefighters, our fire officers, our EMTs and paramedics, our 911 operators and fire communications personnel, and our amazing civilian professional staff. They carry this mission every single day. And in fact, today, our city has seen the absolute best of the best. In the past 7 hours, our personnel have responded to a 3-alarm fire that they are still there working, a building collapse, and an underwater rescue in the Inner Harbor, where our special operations personnel executed a flawless and successful dive operation. I also want to recognize our labor partners, our community stakeholders, and especially Mayor Scott and his administration, who have been essential to every accomplishment reflected within this budget. This work is theirs as much as it is ours. We are continuously reforming our operations to meet the demands of a world that is moving faster, demands smarter solutions, and expect its public safety agencies to keep pace with technology and innovation. We are bringing data and new technology into our decision-making, staying closely connected to every community that we serve, and building an organization that is not just strong in community health as it is in fire and emergency response. This is not change for the sake of change. This has been a deliberate and strategic reimagining of what 21st century fire and EMS departments should look like. and Baltimore City deserves nothing less. The Baltimore City Fire Department is not on the sidelines of Baltimore's renaissance. We are part of it. And with that, I will now walk you through each of our 9 service areas, the investments and reductions, and the performance data that tells the full story of where this department stands and where it is headed. So the first slide just reflects our org chart with regard to our services. All of our fire, all of our external services itself. So starting off with Service 600. This service provides agency-wide executive leadership and direct support functions, including budget and financial oversight, as well as IT and HR management for the department and general administrative services. This year's recommended budget is just over $13 million, and recommended positions are 38. This includes abolishing 2 positions, a secretary, 3 and a human resources assistant, as well as defunding 1 paralegal. It does show an increase in city-owned facility lease payments by approximately $98,000. And it reduces administrative and contractual appropriation by $300,000 based on planned spending for this coming fiscal year. We've been driving a multi-pronged overtime mitigation strategy within this service, which includes internal fiscal stat with an overtime dashboard, frequent command staff reviews of top earners, and deploying operational strategic staffing that has been driving a multi-pronged overtime cost mitigation strategy, including the acceleration of hiring, vacancy reduction, dynamic scheduling, and predictive workforce analytics. I would add that as I stand here tonight, we only have 3 vacant positions at the EMT firefighter level, which is huge for our department. That's the entry level for our department. With the advent of the class that just came in last week, that class will eventually be 43 EMT firefighter candidates. So that'll take us down to 3 vacancies. The only reason those vacancies even exist is because the class had already been processed and was in progress, and then those 3 vacancies came up. But I want to publicly commend my staff, all of my staff, my command staff, my HR staff, and especially our fire academy staff for the work that's been done here to bring our staffing up to where it is today. For Service 602, the recommended budget for this is $225,627,000, with a recommendation of positions being 1,172. This service protects city residents and millions of annual visitors by providing a 24/7 land and marine-based fire protection, emergency medical services, rescue, and hazardous materials mitigation. Reflected within this budget are wage adjustments from last year's contracts that were awarded, labor contracts that were awarded, the 6% adjustment, as well as the funding for the Battalion Tech program. Right now it'll be on an overtime basis, which provides the dedicated resource to each battalion chief to assist with incident scene management. That program will be on an overtime basis rather than new positions, and is estimated the cost at right around $3.7 million. Our department continues to reduce fire fatalities and preventable emergencies through extended public education, smoke alarm outreach, which you'll hear numbers about tonight, and targeted engagement in our most highest risk communities. Outreach initiatives are increasingly focused on our senior and vulnerable populations, ensuring residents most at risk receive direct fire prevention education and life safety resources. Our home safety inspections surged to well over 59,000 in FY25. Right now, we're nearly 5 times the 12,000 target, demonstrating the scale of BPD's proactive community engagement. For Service 609, the recommended budget is $73,934,000 with a position recommendation of 350. This service provides 24/7 response, medical assessment, treatment, and hospital transport of trauma and medical patients in the city of Baltimore. This service responds to over 180,000 incidents and transports just under 90,000 patients annually. It includes the downgrade of 4 advanced life support units to BLS, which occurred last year after the budget book had been finalized. And that funds contractual medic units, which we are very data rich with some very impressive data. Chief Matz will speak more about that tonight. It's also funded by the general fund and the opioid restitution funds. Again, this change was initiated in fiscal 26. Allocating $5.5 million for contractual EMS service, 911 triage, and pop health. We did abolish 1 paramedic position to create a plans reviewer position. That also was well in process last year prior to our hearing. Through our 911 diversion and nurse navigation program, we continue to shift the lowest acuity medical calls away from overcrowded emergency departments and towards healthcare providers. This has factually reduced our unit hourly utilization of BCFD units. In FY27, the program will expand to include 3 additional healthcare partners, 2 of which include pediatric providers and 1 dental provider. We're very proud that we now have 21 local clinics on board as destinations for non-acute care needing individuals. And again, we're addressing the need for pediatric care as well as dental care. EMS incidents have declined from just under 165,000 in FY22 to just under 159,000 in FY25. I believe this is a direct reflection of the measurable success of diversion and prevention efforts that our department has taken. For Service 610, this service maintains the current level of service. The service provides outreach and education to city residents, businesses, and visitors on fire safety, fire prevention, and emergency medical services. Our team has responded to hundreds of requests for fire and life safety education programs, and they're very proud of the fact that they've trained well over 500 citizens this fiscal year in hands-only CPR. In addition, this team is responsible for well over 1,500 Narcan kit distributions to citizens, continuing our frontline role in Baltimore's opioid response. Next slide. Service 611 is fire code enforcement. A recommended budget is $7.7 million with 33 positions recommended for funding. This service works closely with the code enforcement team and DHCD to ensure new commercial and residential construction within the city meets our established fire codes. Creation of 2 fire inspector positions will advance their capabilities beyond what we're currently at. This service also transfers $24,000 to service administration for office supplies and other support reasons. The Office of the Fire Marshal has completed more than 12,500 inspections year to date. FY24 actually reached well over 18,000, nearly double their original target. A lot of advances have been made by Chief Hamlin and his staff this year. We'll talk on it later, but just to touch very briefly, they have established a new customer service kiosk, which so far has assisted approximately 140 customers, averaging about 13 a month. And it is designed to improve public access to inspection and permitting information, as well as giving our personnel the ability to provide face-to-face, real-time, in-person customer service. They have also launched a new microsite, which streamlines access to permitting guidance, third-party inspection information, and development review resources. FY27 target is 15,000 fire inspections and 2,400 plans reviews. Service 612 maintains the current level of service. This service investigates and tracks the cause of fire to focus on fire prevention efforts. It also issues product recalls and is involved in the prosecution of arson crimes. Again, this maintains the current CLS. Through the current period, 82% of fire investigations have been closed. Causation has been determined in 68% of those cases, and 73% of reports have been closed within 30 days. That office is currently tracking at or above its targets. Of 370 fires investigated, 52 have been ruled incendiary. This underscores the value of this unit in supporting arson prosecution. In calendar 2025 alone, FIB initiated investigations that resulted in 32 arrests in the city of Baltimore. So far this year, FIB has initiated investigations that have resulted in 10 arrests. 77% of them, the investigators, have completed at least 3 training classes. I'll stop at that one. Service 613. The recommended budget is $33.367 million with the recommendation of 9 positions that are being funded. This service is responsible for maintaining and improving the department's building and equipment assets. These are our infrastructure people. The budget includes abolishing 1 long-term vacant position as part of the balancing strategy for 2027. It does allocate $1.6 million for city-owned fleet costs and $4.4 million for the purchase of mobile motorized equipment. We're consolidating $426,000 in non-personnel operating costs into this line item from other services. They've been instrumental in building out conditional purchase agreements after having made final payments of over $542,000 in 2026. I would also like to highlight that this line item, this service, and the personnel contained within have executed a $5 million ARPA-funded breathing apparatus upgrade that the department went through this past year. Within that contract, the new standards come out in 2026, so next month we're going to be upgrading to the current standard. That is a huge accomplishment for this department to be NFPA compliant with breathing apparatus at the time at which the standard is established. Most of those standards stay in play for 5 to 6 years, so once we're compliant with 2026 and the upgrade, our department will be, for the foreseeable future, compliant with those standards, and that is a major, major accomplishment. And I thank Mayor Scott and the ARPA team for that grant that's made this possible. Service 614, Fire Communications and Dispatch. The 27 recommended budget is $21.75 million with recommended positions of 140. This is an extraordinarily busy service. This service processes approximately 1.4 million fire and EMS calls through the CAD system yearly. 90% of the calls processed and dispatched within 1 minute, and 89% of those calls are actually answered within 15 seconds. They are aggressive with their quality assurance. Average QA score on all calls is 95%. 97% of 911 calls have met customer quality assurance benchmarks, positioning us very well as a department against the FY2027 target of 98%. Service 615. The recommended budget is just over $10.6 million, with the recommended positions of being 11. I often speak of this service and the Fire Academy as the gateway. This service tests and trains Fire Academy recruits to maintain staffing levels and promote a workforce whose diversity reflects Baltimore City. This includes increasing the local grant match by $281,000 due to increased funding for the AFG, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, which Chief Shiloh writes for us year over year, as well as the Port Security Grant Program, which she wrote as well. I'll note with the Port Security Grant, the Baltimore City Fire Department is now aggressively training its members in marine firefighting as well as marine firefighting command and control. This is new for our department. This is not something this department has done in the past. We know as a port city, some of the incidents we faced over the past few years, we could go back to the Key Bridge forward, and there's a lot of incidents that we faced here. This has been a huge grant for this department. It also increases personnel funding by $2 million to more accurately reflect new hire trainee positions who are not yet filling field roles for suppression and EMS. We have taken a lot of recommendations from the recent release of the Linden Heights line of duty death, and Chief Shiloh is integrating these fully integrating these into not only recruit training at the Fire Academy, as well as continuing ed training for our current personnel. Finally, I've spoken in some of the hearings about what we now know as Connex City. Connex City is a multi-level simulation structure that's been built from 9 repurposed shipping containers. These containers are configured to replicate Baltimore City-style row home conditions for realistic fireground training, including victim removal, ventilation, ladder operations, and multi-company evolutions. They've also gone as far where they've created compartments to recreate hoarding conditions so that our personnel can accurately respond to those fires. Currently in progress at the Academy, in addition to all that, there is a class of 17 EMS recruits that will graduate in July of 2026. 43 EMT firefighter recruits expected to graduate next May. And we approximate between 25 and 30 recruits we're going to be bringing in July. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll just add that since I've been chief of this department, I don't think Chief Shiloh's gone a total of 30 days without at least one recruit class in her academy. So shout out to our Fire Academy and our HR professionals. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go directly into questions, and we're going to start with Council President Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. I will say in public and in private that I'm proud to have the best fire department in the United States of America right here in the city of Baltimore. I have extraordinary respect and appreciation for the women and men of this department. I have seen them, I think we've all seen them up close and personal in our districts, out there saving lives. We saw during the bridge collapse the work you all did, your leadership during that event. Like you said, we saw even today both a significant 3-alarm fire as well as jumping in and rescuing someone in the harbor. So I just want to start with a note of appreciation, sincere appreciation on behalf of this council for the women and men of the Baltimore City Fire Department, because I think they are best in class. I want to start by asking, in last year's budget, first off, I want to appreciate the work that you and Chief Shiloh and a number of folks have done on trauma-informed care within the department. Have really appreciated that partnership. You and I got to go and see firsthand one of the trainings. Really appreciate you all, the seriousness with which you personally, Chief Wallace and Chief Shiloh and all the rest have taken it. I think it speaks to your leadership that this is something that matters to this city and to this department. My concern remains, we know that this is one of the most stressful jobs in America, that it is both physically and mentally exhausting, that the nonstop demands on people's bodies and the toll it takes on their psyches to go walk into a burning building and see the result of fire deaths, to pull people out, to have to go back to the station, to get called up again. It is a never-ending cycle and it is extremely tough. And we had talked in the past about bringing on a clinician or two to support the mental health of the women and men of this department. Where are we on that?
So thank you not only for the question, Council President, but also your partnership, especially with the trauma-informed care. I'll side just a little bit. I know that just a couple of weeks ago, we had gone well over 550 people have already attended that training. So to do that, we're limited in being able to send people out there. So we usually send 2 engines in a truck. It's 12 people. They go for that time frame that you and I were out there. So to be able to send small groups yet have that kind of number, we appreciate that legislation. I think I've heard a lot of very good about it. As far as the mental health care provider, We talked about this last year. We've continuously pursued it. What I will say to start with, getting that person in place has not been as easy as what I thought it would be. We've already reclassed positions and we have the funding for it. It's not an issue. The way it's written when we write the position has been somewhat of a challenge for us through class and comp. I fully believe it is going to happen, and in fact, it's very likely an imminent thing that's going to happen. I'm going to pass it over to Chief Matz, who's really been working the front line with this to bring it in so he can be a little more exact with you. But that person is going to happen.
Madam Chair, Council President, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, good evening. For the record, my name is James Matz. I'm the Assistant Chief EMS. We did quite a bit of extensive research on that. What does that mental health person look like? What's right for us? The vision that we had is not only to take care of our own personnel, but to have a mental health professional that could work between our medical director, Dr. Lawner, and somebody to oversee a lot of our programs, like our critical incident stress management team, our peer outreach team, our chaplain corps. So going through those echelons of care, what we could honestly afford, the highest level of that will be a physician of mental health, and we can't afford that, unfortunately. We went for that next layer, which is a nurse practitioner of mental health, and that's what we're currently working on with class and comp to get it approved. There's an existing nurse practitioner job description in the health department, but there's been a few questions from class and comp, and we're trying to clean those up now and to get that worked through. I would anticipate that to go forward in the near future.
Can you give me a timeline on that? I want this done yesterday. I think, again, there's nothing more important to me than the physical and mental health of the workforce that you all serve, and knowing the stress of this job. If it's getting held up at class and comp, this seems like a solvable problem. The chief and I were out in Ocean City at Mako, almost a year ago, heard about this type of person in a different department, really hoping that we can close whatever the gap is here and make this hire quickly.
Yeah, so I will commit to working with the fire department on this, but I want to be clear about a potential timeline here. So as you are well aware, we created a deputy commissioner of behavioral health, and we've posted and reposted that position multiple times, and that recruitment has been, pretty challenging. And so we're gonna, of course, work with the the fire department, to make sure that we can get the right classification and that we do the recruitment. That recruitment may take some time to get the right professional that can come in and support the department, but you have my commitment to work with the fire department to get this done ASAP. So let me follow up with DHR and to see what is still outstanding, and we can come and follow back up with you on the timeline once I'm clear about what's outstanding, but then the recruitment process will have to occur.
Understood. And my expectation is that we recruit for the best and scour the four corners of the earth and Baltimore to find someone who is excellent. I would appreciate that. CA, could you check back with me on that by the end of budget, like 2 weeks from now?
Yes, let's put that as a formal committee request so that I can formally follow up.
Okay. Tony, you got that one? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. My second question, battalion techs. This has been, I think, a challenge and a question for the department for a little while. According to the budget book, the FY2027 budget is, and again, and I quote, funding the battalion tech program, which provides a dedicated resource to each battalion chief to assist with incident and scene management. The program will be funded on an overtime basis rather than with new positions at an estimated cost of $3.7 million. This has been a theme in this budget, in the previous budget. Why are we funding these pins with overtime? Why not just create the positions? Can you help me understand the logic there?
So this program's been going on since I want to say calendar year 2022. I could be wrong with that. as a pilot has pre-existed me. This is the way we were sustaining it. The battalion chiefs have they've picked who they want as battalion techs. Not all the battalion techs are actually officers, and when we look right now as far as a cost, right, we know the program is effective. We just saw it today. We know that our battalion chiefs, our incidents have become more complex, and they need that extra set of eyes. They need that information person. They need to be paying attention to their computer, their data terminals, while they're en route to the fire, not worrying about driving a vehicle and turning sirens and lights on. They need to focus on gathering that intel. So that battalion tech gives them that capability while they're en route to the fire. When they arrive on the fire, the battalion tech assumes what the battalion chief was doing on his terminal on the way to the call. The program is extraordinarily effective right now, and this can go one of two ways. We have a split. I think our split is what, Chief Ide, 17 are non-officer and 13 are. Is that what it is?
Yes, that's Chief. It's 11 non-officers and 13 that are officers currently.
Right. So the program's been effective right now the way it is. I think that we're definitely headed in the right direction with it, but I've been doing what was being done. It was very effective, and I didn't change that. I have not changed that. And I think right now—
Chief, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm not questioning the expenditure. I'm not questioning the effectiveness of the battalion chiefs. I think it's a good pin. I'm asking, why are we doing it with overtime funds? Why don't we just create those positions?
Can I chime in here on this one? It actually is, a program like this is more expensive to run with full-time pins, so that was a consideration, because if you create full-time positions, you also have to have enough to backfill when somebody's out on vacation or out on leave. So we did the math on creating full-time positions and the cost of not only just the salaries, but the additional pension cost and the additional positions that have to be created to backfill. And I'm looking for the number. It came out, I believe, about 5 or 6 million to do it on a full-time basis, because fire's already doing it on an overtime basis and is comfortable with how it's working. Felt it was okay to stick with that model.
Just so I'm clear, Mr. Sanami, so these are folks who do other services in the department and then do this purely as an overtime function? Like, can you explain the spec of the job to me? I guess I'm like a little confused about what the job is.
The personnel that fulfill those roles are at different ranks. There are some that are firefighters, there are some that are emergency vehicle drivers, there are some that are lieutenants. But when they come to work, they've been chosen by that battalion chief that they work for. When they come to work, that is their job, to be the battalion tech. So yes, there may be a variety of jobs, but I would say the better way to describe it is probably more so by way of rank. Not every battalion tech is a sworn officer. They're sworn members, but they're non-sworn officers. And one thing that we've done is we've given the battalion chiefs the autonomy to pick who it is they want, who they feel is most effective to work with them on the fire ground.
But the job is battalion tech. Like, these are not folks who are one day doing something else and then on Tuesday they're a battalion tech. Like, the scope of their work is to be a battalion tech, yes?
Correct. And where the overtime occurs is there are 6 fire battalion chiefs on a shift. So today, for instance, with B shift working, those 6 chiefs assigned to that shift have picked their people. Their people come to work, they're working with them. It is their positions in the field that are backfilled with overtime. The techs aren't on overtime, the techs are working. The vacancies that they create because they're working with the chief is where the overtime comes in. So that's where the cost difference lies.
Okay, I am struggling to see how paying for this in overtime could genuinely save taxpayer dollars versus just creating these pins. Mr. Saname, could you send me the math on that? Maybe as a committee request, I'd like to understand the full scope of the position and the justification for why doing it through an overtime allocation is more financially beneficial than just a pin.
We have the math, and if you make it a committee request, we'll provide it. Just to summarize real quickly though,
Yeah.
a full-time position requires pension contribution.
Understood.
Pension contribution for a sworn officer equates to a little bit more than 50% of their salary. In addition to that, you have to create enough pins so that you can backfill it and not use overtime if you're doing it with full-time positions. So you don't just have to create 24, you have to create an extra position per shift in addition to that additional pension cost. So we did the math, I have it in front of me, 3.7 on overtime is what's in the budget. It would have been about 5.3 to do it with full-time pins. And again, that's salary plus overtime plus the extra backfill built in to make sure that it could be staffed on every shift.
And these are not part-time people in the department, right? And they're doing this job as their full-time.
If it was funded with full-time people, we would create positions particularly for that function. But no, today, as the chief said, the battalion chief picks the member that they want to be in that position for that shift.
Yep. And some additional context here. This is actually the first time that we funded this program. So although the program has been operational for the past 2 to 3 fiscal years, it has been unbudgeted and unfunded. And so the chief has been managing and operating the program. We found it to be, as the chief said, extraordinarily helpful to his team and his members. And so this year, and he had been providing that service on overtime. And so again, as a part of the right sizing of the fire department's budget and some of the balancing actions, we put in the amount of money that he's been spending on the program. But I think in the data that we will provide you, you will be able to see, because I asked a question about, well, how, what is it, 3.7 we put in the budget? Yeah, I think what the 3.7 would equate to as far as FTEs. And of course, it would not get us the total number of FTEs that were needed, but just to be clear that this is the first kind of real investment that we have made into the Battalion Tech program. And we funded it at the way that it's been operating and funded previously, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do appreciate at least putting it in the book as a funded position so that we're not just pulling the overtime from some other place. Would appreciate seeing those numbers. I'm gonna ask a series of questions about overtime later on in this hearing, but again, appreciate the work you're doing, appreciate your leadership. Looking forward to that follow-up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Council President, how long do you need on your committee request?
So I would say for the first one, what did we say?
We said at the end of budget on the HR one.
Okay, so that's, when does budget end?
We can do mid-June.
Okay. Yeah, June.
That was the first one, and then Bob, how long? I mean, we have it here, so we can get this next one to you by the end of next week.
Okay.
But we'll try to get it sooner.
Okay. Tony, so June 20th we will have this thing moved and posted and all that, and then.
Well, June 20th, I will provide it to you before then, but June 20th is gonna be me reporting back on what the next steps are. So I hope that it's posted by June 20th. I just have to figure out exactly where it is in the process. So by June 20th, I will communicate to you where we are in the process, next steps and timeline for getting it posted. And if I'm a magician, then I can get it posted by June 20th.
I would expect you are a magician, Madam City Administrator. Okay, great. June 20th for that, and then you said end of next week for send me some data. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chief, before we get into vacancies and overtime, I want to start with the budget structure. In FY26, the city eliminated the EMS special fund and moved EMS costs into the general fund. In FY27, as you mentioned, EMS is budgeted at approximately $73.9 million, with $5.5 million in opioid restitution fund support for contractual EMS services, 911 nurse triage, and the population health Can you tell me first how much EMS revenue is projected in FY27?
We have that number. We can look it up if you don't have it right at the top here. Just give me a moment. It's in our executive summary book. There's a line for it.
While you guys are looking that up, what ways is the committee able to verify throughout the year that EMS generated revenue is supporting EMS service, and it's not rather just disappearing into the broader general fund?
Yeah, so we made that switch for ease of administration. It was causing confusion in prior years with those two funds. But the EMS revenue, and I defer to Chief Matz on the particulars, but we have to apply through the state in terms of the revenue we get back and have to make a report that shows all of the responses. So we can't ask for more than we actually did. So the revenue shows up on the revenue side of the budget, but yeah, it's not more than it's not being diverted for other sources. It has to at least be at a minimum for the service that was provided.
Is there a report that replaces, say, like the transparency? Because when we had the EMS special fund, at least it was like structurally identifiable for us. So is there a report specifically that the council's able to see for transparency?
No, I was referring to, I believe there's a report that has to be submitted to the state in terms of when we ask for our reimbursement. Do you want to explain that one?
Yes, ma'am. The way that the one part of the revenue works, it's called ESPP. It's a supplemental payment program. We have to submit a extensive report that's completed by our billing vendor, Digitech. And what it is, it's for the prior fiscal year, and that has to go in by, it goes in by, usually by the end of the year, by 12/31. And then we usually get payment back right about the end of June. But what happens is we do a bunch of research on every and any cost associated with EMS. Everything from the vehicles, vehicle expenses, personnel training. I mean, EMS equipment is extremely expensive. A cardiac monitor alone can exceed $75,000. So we put all those together and they write out a report and they figure out what is the actual cost of each EMS transport. So what the ESPP fund does is it allows us to bill back Medicaid for the cost that we lose when we do a Medicaid transport. Medicaid currently, we're woefully underpaid for Medicaid transports. We usually clear about $200 per transport, when the actual cost of an EMS transport through those reports is about $3,000 per transport, when you do all the math and figure out all the costs. So what we do is through Digitech, our vendor, we create an extensive report. We outline all of our expenses, come out with our annual cost, what it costs per transport. And then beyond that transport, what they do is they send that to the state. The state has a third-party auditor. They audit all of that stuff to verify all the funds are correct. And then that goes off to the federal government. And we clear that 50% of that cost. So we're able to recoup some of those funds. The problem that's going on now is early this year, we were notified that CMS is auditing, and we had an extensive audit done as well as Baltimore County and a couple other jurisdictions within the state. And they're looking very closely at Medicaid funds right now. I haven't got the answer on where we're at yet. They're actually still in flux with the current payment that we're waiting on. So that's kind of where we're at. It's not, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed funds at this point with the way they're auditing, because they audited us, and I thought the audit was done in January when we did it. Then they came back with some additional items. And it's not just Baltimore City. It was Baltimore City, Baltimore County, a couple on the Eastern Shore, and I think PG County was involved as well. And they were looking at the different systems and how that works. So
the total amount is $80.5 million is budgeted for fiscal 27.
I apologize. All of the budgeted funding is going back into EMS.
Yes, we're pulling up the cost for the EMS service. So what Director Sinema was describing was we can't bill for more or request more than what the service itself costs. So can we pull up the EMS?
Yeah, so a couple things to clarify. The revenue that's in the budget for this year is actually what was like reported last year, so you can't do a perfect lineup in the budget. We can also bill for the ESPP part of the program for certain overhead costs. So you're not going to be able to line up exactly the EMS service with the revenue, but we have to ensure we can't spend more. We can't divert revenue to other parts of the general fund. We have to make sure we're reporting accurately that we're not bringing in more revenue than what we spend on EMS services. But remember, EMS services, we can bill for overhead, for vehicles, for other things that are in other parts of the fire department budget. And there's also that 1 year lag that we're showing the revenue for this year of what was actually recorded from the service that was provided last year.
Thank you all. I want to go into the, thank you. I want to go into the Linden Heights report. And I know that earlier, Chief, you were speaking about how Chief Shiloh was working through a lot of the recommendations that were put through within the report. Can you give us a total number of recommendations that were provided within the report? What do we have pending, and what has already been completed? Noting that when that report was actually completed, the fire department was already in front of a few of these recommendations.
Yeah, so I'll start, and thank you for the question. Yes, we were out in front of those. So they're broken out really, I would say in two pieces, right? Training, which we had already initiated that, and there were also equipment concerns there. A lot of the equipment concerns have been mitigated, and in fact, we've actually gone beyond some of those equipment concerns and some of the things we've done. Just as an example, we're one of the only fire departments around that uses on additional alarms of fire. We actually deploy a second RIT team, rapid intervention team. So on every fire call that we go to, there is a rapid intervention team that's identified. But as additional alarms are struck, more personnel come to the scene, we enhance that. We expanded from small things, right? One thing that was identified there is our paramedics had a hard time defeating the turnout gear with scissors. They had a hard time cutting through. They've enhanced that now. They have all, that's, while it seems small, it's incredibly important that if we have a firefighter down, we have to get inside that protective envelope. So they've been able to do that. Breathing apparatus, huge concern. That was one of the first things that after that that incident that I approached the mayor and CA about. We knew that breathing apparatus, I believe, was 2007 standard and was purchased in 2013. Am I right? So we knew that we were behind several standards. The ARPA funds were invested. We've brought them up to current standard. I'll have to get you the exact number and breakdown. I want to be accurate in that. I can sit here and cite all the things that we've done, but in the interest of your question, asking for numbers, I have to go back and look, and I would have to ask Chief Shiloh about her training curriculums, but we're happy to supply that to you.
How long would it take you guys to get it to me? I know that we had 82 total action items that we're identifying is just need an improvement. 20 items were already taken care of. There were a comprehensive list of 60 recommendations with further detailed into 100 specific action items. 18 were recognized as strengths, 44 were identified as immediate recommendations, and 38 were identified as concern and less immediate improvements. So just how long would it take you to get me the total amount? And then instead of, and I totally appreciate the breakdown of what we need to know of what you have done, specifically the breathing apparatus. But can you also outline exactly what those, not just say the total but also exactly what it is that was completed, what action you guys took.
So that's a request for when we submit the data to you?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
How long would it take you?
Can I have 30 days on that?
I'll
just
give
to
you
be
30
able
days.
to? Okay. And I know Chief Shiloh can answer some of your questions with regard to training. This has been a department-wide thing from our logistics people to operations to our fire and EMS committee, the safety office. A lot of things changed with the safety office. There were tactical changes that were made. There were MOPs that were adjusted. I have a book, a huge book of just everything that we were trying to work on. And I will say that, at the same time, we were still working on some of the stricter recommendations. So when we look at what we were able to do behind Linden Heights, we wanted to also parallel that with some of the things that were still needed with stricter so that the breathing apparatus, that's a huge investment. It's well over $5 million that's been invested. And, contractually, I think we did an excellent job because we were actually able to build into the contract with our breathing apparatus supplier. They got us to the current standard, which was a 2018 standard. They got us there. That's what we're using right now. That was the piece I spoke about where an NFPA standard may last 5 or 6 years. They got us there. But we were also able to negotiate the upgrade to 2024 standard, which is just now starting to come out. And the fire department will start rolling that out in June. So there's been a ton of thoughtful work put into this. But if I could have 30 days on that so that I could be real comprehensive and, accurate for you, I would appreciate that, ma'am.
You got Chief Wallace or Chief Shiloh. Are there any specific recommendations that you want to highlight that remain unfunded?
Good evening, Deputy Chief Laura Shiloh. I'm the Director of Education for the Fire Department. There were some of the recommendations that were made that we immediately identified as some weaknesses before the report even came out. And a lot of that was incorporated into our initial recruit training. We teach them skills at the very end for the last month, fire skills. One of the things that we did focus on was fire dynamics, the way fire behaves. They actually got 2 days of that, how to flow water onto smoke and heat. And that's something that we had not really focused on prior to Linden Heights. Some of that, we had those classes grant funded for field members, but we've now rolled that into recruit training. Every recruit that comes through there for firefighter gets those 2 additional days of fire dynamics. They also get an entire day with the thermal imager. They're getting more intense training with their SCBA, with their breathing apparatus, so that they can address emergencies with that as well. The emergency activation button, we're working with the radios a little bit more, so they're getting a whole lot more hands-on training at the end of their formal, academic training than they had before. We also have a lot of grant-funded classes that are delivered to the field that had been in development prior to Linden Heights. We have a focus lab, which is a simulation lab for officers and incident management, and that is grant funded. It was in process, but I think that there were a lot of recommendations that said to continue what we were doing, so we are, if that answers.
So at this time, it's nothing it's nothing from the report that a recommendation that has not been funded within FY27.
So there was a recommendation for us to add a fitness trainer. There was a recommendation for us to add a second heavy rescue unit. So that would be that would be creating a new piece of apparatus. So that would come with the investment of the apparatus, the training of the personnel to staff it, as well as more positions. So we would literally be adding another unit to day-to-day fire department operations. So that's not something that's funded right now.
Yep, and then I have the report in front of me, and so to your point about the fact that there are, is it the 44, the immediate recommendations, the recommendations that are in red, as I go through this, there's the battalion tech program funding was one of the recommendations, which is included in the FY27 budget. And a lot of the recommendations are specifically around training, communication, updates to the SOP. There is a recommendation in here, and I'm just now talking about the immediate recommendations. I'm not talking about the long-term recommendations.
Yeah, so I guess what I was asking is about any unfunded recommendations, like specifically if anything was submitted by the fire department at FY27, for FY27, that the city has not funded.
Okay, what I was focusing on are the immediate recommendations, the ones that were noted as being immediate and not necessarily medium or
Right,
long-term.
but that wasn't my question. So is that something that, can you get me a cost, like say it was provided to me, and I don't know this is finance, if it's directly for the chief and the fire department, for the items that are currently unfunded, if we can get some type of cost estimate, we may not have an exact cost, but if we can get a cost estimate for the items that still remain unfunded, they came out of report specifically for the fitness trainer, for the apparatus. I know that you said that required another unit, and I know that some things may not be possible, but we still, as a committee, need to think about what is in these recommendations for these reports.
Yes,
and we
ma'am.
need to know how much it is so we can make sure that we're planning and that our fire department, our public safety agencies are getting the support that they need.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you guys, and thank you to my thank you to my colleagues. Thanks for your patience on that one. We're going to go to Vice President Middleton. Thanks, Councilwoman Ramos. We're going to go to, I got to make sure you're here, Councilman Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, just want to say thank you and kudos to everything that you guys do over at Fire. And I think I just sent you some pictures of, there was a fire in my neighborhood, literally a block away from me, and we had just dropped my son off for a weekend at his aunt's house. And I just thought I was going to have like a nice night of sleep, and I was about to go take a shower, and I heard one fire truck and then three. And then I looked on Citizens app, and there was a fire coming out the back, blazing out of like two homes. And so I walked up the street, and lo and behold, someone I know, we went to St. Middle School, he ended up being on scene. I think it was truck 8. Right on Hilton and Frederick, et cetera, Engine 8, Dave Rumber, and he actually went in and saved the dog that was in the basement. And so I took pictures and I sent them to you, but first I sent them to my OWL text group to make fun of him. But it just shows just like how you guys just go beyond the pale. And it was something I asked a few times of a few people, and this is after the constituent was really worried. They were two dogs. They already saved one, and he went down, found him right in the exact place that the constituent said the dog would be. And actually, the dog may have bit him once or twice, and he still walked out and came down the steps with him. And the lady just like fell out in tears. Long story, short anecdote, but it just shows like just how much you guys, the attention to detail, and just the little things that really. That she'll always remember. She may remember the fire, but she'll also remember the time that you guys went out your way to do what you were supposed to do. I think I know I think you know what I'm about to bring up, and that is Public Safety Apprenticeship Program. Where are we with the recruitment for this program, and how many of these students have translated into full-time positions with the department?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to defer that right over to Dr. Hart, who's the program manager. So sitting.
Good
Where she
evening,
is.
Dr.
No,
Shante
she's
Hart,
down there.
Fire Assistant Chief of Staff. Councilman Gray, we were able to talk some time ago, and I believe we laid out for you the plan of what we wanted to do. And we have actually implemented that plan. We have. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to design a cadet program that gave us long-term workforce development, and we wanted a recruitment pipeline. So that's how we focused on this, and that's how we looked at this. We created, or we built a sustainable program structure. And for us, that creates continued recruitment opportunities within the department, and it also gives us long-term staffing benefits. So the way that we factored in getting that done, and what we've done is we created a two-phase, it's connected in two phases, and that defines our pipeline and our pathway. And the first piece of it starts with the junior cadet program. And those are Baltimore City High School students. They are 11th and 12th graders. The second phase, or once they filter from that program, they will then transition into the cadet program. That is the paid program that then will feed our fire academy and allow them to become recruits. And we started that process. So we had a total of 26 participants in our junior cadet program. We really did not expect that sort of turnout and that sort of response. However, we started, I believe we accepted 27, we finished with 26. And so during that time, they met at the fire academy, they were introduced to the department, they became acclimated, and they learned a lot about this agency and what it is that we do, because a lot of times they really do not understand what we do as an agency. They received mentorship, they got to know and develop rapport with some of the personnel within our agency, just getting to show them what we have available as career paths, to get them to understand what else we do in the department. They got to visit many different areas and learn a lot about this agency. By the end of that program, and actually that program ended on May 9th, we had a closing ceremony for the students, and the response was more than we expected. A lot of the students, they were not ready for the program to end. They wanted to know what was next. So what we did do to satisfy an immediate need was we've hired actually 2 fire cadets. They're recent Baltimore City High School graduates, with a third that will start in 2 weeks. We intentionally left the other positions for the students who participated in our junior cadet program, because we want to make sure we offer them something. If we're bringing you in and we're saying this is our pipeline and this is what we like to see, we did not want to fill all of those positions, because we want to have something available for them when they graduate in June. So once they graduate in June, we would hope that before the end of the summer, they would actually now become cadets. They are going to, those who still have an interest, we have maybe 17 of them who are seniors, because it's comprised of 11th and 12th graders. And out of that 17, we have a strong 13 who have said this is the career that they definitely want. So we are looking to transition them into the cadet program, and from there we will assist them with applying to the agency, with testing for the agency, continue that mentorship, continue to show them what the agency is. And we're really feeling good about it. And we thought that that was the way that we should structure this, to make sure that we are receiving and that we are pushing through the appropriate individuals, because there are times that you can have people become a part of something without really understanding it, and it may not be necessarily what they want. But we're making sure that they understand, they know what it is, they understand the profession, and that they're still interested. And then we transition them to cadet and then into the academy.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited just to hear about that. Something that preceding me, Councilman Burnett was really integral in, and I was in his office during that time and know how much time and effort was put into it. And so it's really good to see the fruits of that labor really growing. And it's also important that the folks that we are getting into the fire department are people that are from Baltimore. And it's great to get people from Baltimore County, from Carroll County, but people from Baltimore. This is what Council President Cohen speaks about all the time when we say we want to make sure that the talent is really is locally sourced, right? And I really love that you guys are really looking at juniors and seniors instead of the folks that are already graduated. Because once you're 18, you just go to the academy, you just go already. And so finding these kids before before they start to explore other options, getting them to actually fall in love and having that high retention is a true testament to everything that you guys do. So I just want to say thank you and keep up the good work. Anything that you need from my office or any other office about getting the word out, let me know. And I don't know why I wasn't there at the graduation. I think I may have had something I had to do that day, but rest assured, like I will try to make it my best to attend each and every last one of those, because I think it's important for them to see that, not only is this policy in place, but you have the policy makers also supporting this. So thank you for that. And so my second question revolves around the medic units. The fire department has downgraded from 4 ALS medic units to BLS and using those savings for contractual medic units. Are we sacrificing our quality medics for cost savings? And can you really get into what the impact of this change is, and what, if any, is the impact on cardiac survival rates, which are currently at 29 versus 35? And I think this will be a very teachable moment, especially for anyone who may have seen, I know I've seen them lately. I think are they AMR or BMR? I've seen a bunch of those lately on the street, and I was trying to figure out where they're coming from. And a couple weeks ago, learned that this was going on. And so, could you just go into that? Why you guys downgraded those, and I guess what the savings would be, but also like what is the impact on the quality of care that people will receive when they call 911?
So thank you for your question, Councilman. We did in the fire department was evaluated what we were doing. We had to figure out what we were doing and do things better, smarter than other places around us. So what we did to try to improve things like response time, workload, and things like that is we tried to look at some different angles and different tools in the toolbox. That contract that we worked out, and it took many years to get that through. What we did is we took a page out of what Washington, D.C. was doing with their nurse navigation, and then we borrowed it up here, I want to say. But what that part of that contract does is when somebody calls 911 and it's a low priority, low acuity call, what we do is we're able to navigate that call to a nurse, and that nurse is able to either treat those people at home, direct them to a physician and do a telemedicine visit, maybe use an Uber or Lyft and take somebody to an urgent care center. And in some cases, they use some of those commercial units to transport people to either the ER or to urgent care centers. As the chief talked about earlier, there's a lot of other outside resources instead of flooding the ED. One of the major problems, and I'm sure it'll come up, is response time. Response time was the old paradigm we did through the NFPA standard. It was a 9-minute response standard. The problem with that is not all calls are critical. Sometimes those calls are people that have low acuity calls that can wait. And that's where it really gets kind of fuzzy, where you try to figure out what's the actual response time. We actually do the metric for responses to sensitive type calls or high acuity calls, and our response time to that is actually 8.71 minutes is what it was last year. The other problem we have to try to get better is we have problems with hospital offload. Our normal scene time looking over a couple years for our units on the street roughly lasts about 15 minutes. Our average time at the hospitals is about 50. All that stuff strings out what we're doing. So what we're trying to do is be smarter and get calls off the front end. Some of the things that we're doing on the front end, like I just told you about, was the nurse navigation. The other thing that we do with that is we were able to leverage some surge units to give us a break and take the workload down on our people. What we did is we looked at the unit hour utilization, which is really a metric we use for how hard is a unit working per hour. Last year, before we started implementing this with the peak units, the commercial surge units, our average unit hour utilization for medic units was 63, or 63% of every hour medic units were running. That same number for ambulances, which are the basic life support, was at 59%. And just as far as we've gone for this fiscal year through the 27th, that medic unit UHU has dropped from 63 to 44%. So we're taking the workload down for our people. And you ask what was the benefit of doing that? It was a strategic move to one of financial savings. It's inexpensive, and we were able to reduce the workload on our people. Now the question is, what does that do to our responses in terms of ALS and BLS? Not all transports that we do are advanced life support. A lot of those are things like bleeding, bandaging, broken bones. They're basic life support appropriate. The other thing that we added probably a little over a year ago is our advanced life support chase car. So if somebody that's a basic life support person gets on a call and it's not the right call, we're able to send that car in and they're able to upgrade that call appropriately. Just since we've been doing this, the advanced life support chase car, they've done 5,734 calls since 4/22 of 24, and 92% of the time they're upgrading the right type of call. So we're doing a lot of different things to try to take the workload down and improve what we're doing, improve outcomes for our patients. So far, I've been real happy with the data. I just got the data. Looking at the unit hour utilization, there's some really incredible numbers. We're going to continue to watch it. In terms of the navigation, we're doing so well with the nurse navigation piece. DC actually, at the last meeting we were in, wants to come to Baltimore and find out why we're having such success. We're actually up at around 25% of those calls that we're able to navigate correctly, and that's above DC. So they actually wanted to come to us to do that. And just real quick about that nurse navigation piece that I just wanted to add, and I promise I'll stop talking. One of the things that they do with the nurse navigation, they want to make sure they don't mess up and send the wrong kind of person and people have an adverse outcome. So the next day they call and they get, they speak to people, hey, how are you doing? Was there any problems? They also do a satisfaction survey and they ask people, hey, why did you call? And they found out 69% of the time that people perceived a low priority condition as an emergency. And then 20% of those others, they have transportation issues. So we're able to kind of analyze where we're going at. I'm happy to report our satisfaction survey that they've been doing. They're running about 4.8 out of 5, which means we've had positive success from it.
All of that sounds amazing. And I guess the follow-up is like quickly in two parts. One, in downgrading those units, can you quickly just talk about what does that do? Are we losing EMT folks? Does it give them rest and reprieve? What is downgrading these 4 medic units to BLS actually do to the workforce? And then secondly, I guess I should be also giving kudos to our 911 dispatchers as well for having the ability to differentiate when a call comes through and being able to send out which unit. So kudos to them. I just want to make sure I give them their flowers while they can. But could you also go into explaining what effect it has on actual workforce for sworn fire EMT folks versus contractors?
So thank you for that question. I'll at least start on that. So a couple things. One, it's the units being downgraded. We're not downgrading our people. So we still have our paramedics. We concentrated them into where there were vacancies. And it was a question last year during our budget hearing that came, I think, from Councilman Conway with regard to growing our own people. We're aggressively doing that as well. So where we have EMTs in the fire department now, we're very much supporting them as they go through college. We have tuition reimbursement. We work with vacation and things like that. And that's been very successful for us. So there's that piece. As far as job impact or burnout, I think one of our biggest problems is we constantly send our paramedics to calls where paramedics are not needed. And that's been the model back in the early 90s when I was a paramedic. Chief Shiloh was Chief Matz. We were all paramedics in the field, and we were constantly going to calls where, as paramedics, we did not function to our highest level, of capability. So very low acuity, non-emergency calls. They came in through the 911 center. We have to respond to that. So decentralizing that somewhat and kind of spreading that call volume out with the appropriate level of care going to the appropriate call has been phenomenal for us. You've heard us speak about the backlog in hospitals, our hospital wait times, our downtimes. We know that our providers, whether they're paramedics or EMTs, we know they're extraordinarily quick on the scene. Our on-scene times average somewhere between 13 and 15 minutes. That is excellent. When you take into consideration a cardiac arrest, major trauma, that's very good. That's something that we should be proud of. But it's that back end at the hospital. So the tie-in is this. We've added, right now, as of today, we've added 21 care facilities in addition to the 11 hospitals that we use now. So we've almost doubled the capability for disposition through the nurse navigation system, and our people don't transport that. And I think that's huge. I think now, instead of just saying, well, you have 11 hospitals to work with, now we have 21 additional facilities that we can get people to. They can get that low acuity care. Our units don't have to transport them. They still get that positive outcome, and that's by way of that nurse navigation line system. So I think it's a broad program. It's a big program, but when you narrow right down back to your question on what's it doing for our people, the hourly utilization has come down. We're trying to send our paramedics to those lesser acuity calls. And if we only have EMTs for an high level or a high acuity call, we still have our EMS officers, which are paramedics that run. And Chief Matt spoke about the Chase unit, which has been very effective in upgrading as well.
Thank you. I have a follow-up, but I'll wait until next round. Thank you, Chair.
Actually, I have a quick follow-up for my colleague's first question. What is driving the high retention? Starting with 27, keeping 26, having 50%, 13 of those interested in moving forward. That's amazing. So what is driving the high retention within your program?
I think it's because we were very intentional in the way that we planned the program and how we were going to engage the students, what we were going to provide them with month over month, because we do know that they get bored easily and they may not be interested if you're not engaging them and keeping them interested. So we made sure that we selected areas in the department that we knew would be of great interest to them. We took them to City Watch so they could see that. We took them to the boat. We took them to the 911 and dispatch center. We took them to mega stations, things of that sort. We showed them CPR, things of that sort. So just anything to engage them, opportunities for them to do some hands-on activities. We took them to the academy, showed them the burn building, just things to keep them engaged and keep them interested. That was how we were able to keep them going, and they enjoyed it so much that on that last day, they really were not ready for the program to end. They wanted to know what was next. And they've been in touch with me since they left to make sure I'm not forgetting them and make sure that I'm aware that when their graduation date is so they can move on to the next phase. So they are very eager to be a part of this department.
That's really great engagement. We just know that from them, including you within their life milestones. I mean, those are the success stories that we want to hear about when we're in front of these budget hearings, because that way we know that the funding that we're providing, the legislation that we're putting forward and fighting for, when folks are saying, I remember when folks said nobody's going to sign up for those programs. So I'm gonna move on and get to, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief Wallace. Thanks for everybody in leadership here and everybody in the department. I know it's been a long day. We appreciate all the work you've done before now and it's continuing to go on around the city. Just had two questions here in this first round. I know in Annapolis, we had Senate Bill 445 and House Bill 532 that were passed and signed by the governor this spring. I know those aren't going to take effect in a while, but it relates to overtime and a limit of 42 hours on overtime in a given week or over a 4-week period. Just initial reflections. I know your office and your leadership, and certainly the mayor's office and budget director and finance are going to be working on this together. But first impressions, implications for how we operate here, yeah, just would love to hear your reflections as our fire chief.
So with the overtime bill right now, we would be looking at any contract awards that would happen, with regard to salary, any labor awards between now and then would change this number. We know that implication be about $5.2 million, I think, in overtime. So we know that right up front. I don't think by way of the bill, I'm trying to remember the exact language in the bill. I don't think that there's a mandate that you have to reduce your workforce hours down to 42 hours. I could be wrong. But that's where we know we're at right now with regard to the cost implication.
Yeah, the bill just from memory, it basically said you need to, and this would go into effect in calendar 28, which would be our fiscal 29, but it basically said you have to have a minimum work week of that averages 42 hours per week. And your options for doing that are either you pay for the hours that are above 42, or you just have a schedule that's 42 hours. And our current schedule, I think, is about 46.3, if I'm remembering correctly. So the option that the chief is mentioning would be you would pay the difference. So for those, 4 and change hours, you would have to pay an overtime rate, so additional half time for those hours worked for every single person in the shift, for all suppression personnel, and that's why there's a significant cost, and it would come out of overtime. It would be additional overtime cost. Going to a schedule that's a 42-hour work week would require you to add additional staff. We used to have a 42-hour work week. We went to this model because it required fewer staff. That was a significant savings to the city, which also we were able to reinvest back into our fire department, firefighters back in those times. So, going to a schedule that has a minimum work week of 42 hours and actually staffing up to that would be even more significant. We're talking $20+ million on a recurring basis per year.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the distinction because certainly knew there were cost implications, but also I know how much time and effort has been spent getting our deployment schedule and our work schedule set up. And so I'm glad to hear that we have some flexibility in terms of how to address it, and that there is a path forward that doesn't involve us completely reimagining the way that we deploy our staff, but does carry significant costs. So thank you for that reflection on both sides there. And we spent a lot of time last year speaking about the permit process and the review process through the fire department, and last year saw significant resources dedicated that way, both for additional staff, but also for, if I'm recalling correctly, for some contracted plans review for more simple projects. I see, certainly there's data here in front of us in terms of fire inspections and plan reviews and all the rest. Also, I see that we're creating 2 new inspector positions on the inspector side out in the field. And that also there was I think one more reclassification of a plans reviewer from a paramedic. Granted, that's still something that's in the works, and then we're continuing to grow and kind of shift resources around. But so far through this fiscal year, after the change we made last year and under your leadership, what's been our progress? What improvements have we seen, and what are we trying to accomplish with these further investments?
So one of the changes that's been made is we have a new fire marshal. Deputy Chief Hamlin is in the room, so we made an adjustment there. But we also we've obviously been working we worked with the Tiger team for a while. We're working with the HCD. We've been working through the Acela, but I've asked my team to focus on us and focus heavily on customer service. And so we put a data analyst over in that office, and we began to look at, we began to ask ourselves, who are we in this process? Who are we and what are we doing? What are we doing wrong? And can we back up either doing things correctly with data, or can we show where we're doing things wrong with data? And that's really been the driver of some of the things that both myself and Chief White will talk about. So just one of the analytics alone, what we're trying to do is we try to look at when a permit comes in, how successful are we when the application comes in at that first pass? When we first get our hands on this thing, we take a look at it and we begin to evaluate that. We know that we're almost 77% successful just on first pass alone. We have that permit honored, resolved, issued, however you want to term that. But on a second pass alone, they jump from 76% to almost 93% success. So we know that we can get a lot of these right away. What we want them to do, though, when they start getting to third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh passes, now we have to figure out, why are we not doing this? You know, are we seeing things that are coming in from the customer that maybe just aren't right? Are we seeing that we're not articulating the solution the right way? Where are those problems? We see not only the amount of what I call passes, right? First pass, second, third, fourth. We see not only those passes dropping in quantity, but we also see our quality of service is really not the issue. There may be times, and these are very low numbers, very low percentages, where the customer is just not, we're just not getting it. The other thing that they did, Chief Hamlin was very proactive with this along with Chief White, is they've put that customer service kiosk inside the fire marshal's office now. So if you have a permit and you have a problem, you can walk in, you can get right into your permit, right in that kiosk, and we have somebody that's going to be right there to help you and answer your questions. They've gotten a very favorable response out of that. In addition, last year we had stood up we had started to work on a microsite for the fire marshal's office. That's expanded it just exponentially, and that's really given us a lot of outreach there. And then finally, what they're about to roll out is we're going to place another civilian employee right at that front desk. I like to call it the front office, but right in the very front. When a permit comes in, that person is going to use a template form. They are going to make contact. So Councilman, if you apply, they're going to send you a letter, and it's going to tell you that I'm your inspector and Chief Matz is my boss. Here's my email address, here's my phone number, here's his email address and his phone number. But we also want to remind you, pay attention to the communication line with inside a cella, because that's your main point with regard to your permit. That's where the dialogue is going to occur if there's a problem. But if you have an issue with me, you now have his information and you can go right to him. So we have really taken, and I know the CA talked about one of her priorities last night with regard to city service and customer service. We've taken extraordinarily forward-facing, proactive approach to try to be accessible, try to be accurate, and really do our part to try to make these processes work well. I think I got everything, but Chief White, if I missed anything, go ahead.
Hello, Chief White, Executive Assistant Chief, Baltimore City Fire Department. What I would add to what Chief Wallace said is that we've also, we've also been able to onboard a plans manager, which has also helped with that review process, as well as in April, we just onboarded a plans reviewer. So those things, I think, collaboratively, along with the team that's already there with Chief Eames and Captain Dawson and Captain Wilson, has improved. And so by recent information, we see that we've done 3,474 plans reviewed this year. So that's an increase from last year. So that's a lot of dedication, a lot of time, but that also goes to the strategic planning that we did put in place to get that section up.
Just to double check those numbers last time. So through this point in FY26, how many have we reviewed?
At this point in FY26, we've reviewed 3,474 plans, and that's passes. So one plan may require 1 to 7 passes. So we've reviewed that plan 3,474 times.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Torrance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up from some email communications we had before about our current status of apparatus or in maintenance. How many are out of service currently by engines? I have a constituent who continually asks us for update. The last update we had was a month ago. Just want to know.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Dante Stewart, Assistant Chief of Support Services and Community Risk Reduction. So currently we have 2 ladder trucks out of service at this time.
I appreciate y'all because the number that I got before was higher than that. And I just want to highlight that is way better than we were 2 months ago. And thank you, DGS, too. Because it made my constituent email me every week on Monday morning about where we are in the status of it. I just want to thank you guys. My next question is very clear. I've been talking to some of our hospital partners because we've seen a number of alarming rates with stroke victims in the city of Baltimore, given our current access and utility of our EMS. One of the interesting partnerships they're thinking about is similar to Toronto, where we will work with them to actually acquire stroke mobiles, which allows us to work with our hospital partners to have a person get a CT and other services in the field right away. That way, it is not on our high level of care that we need, but that was something that they pursue, something I've noticed that we can pursue for federal funding, and we'd love to plan that with you guys, because I think that that's an opportunity for us to lower the burden in EMS too, especially with a number of seniors in my side of Baltimore, Black and brown, who have experienced strokes. A few who had, thanks to your backup units, had the assistance right away. But I think, as I know, my grandmother who had a catastrophic stroke, time is brain and time is function. And I would love to partner with you guys to figure out how we can ensure that we protect our most vulnerable seniors.
Absolutely, Councilman. We'd be more than happy to work with you to find out about that. I'm not even familiar with that, but I'd be more than happy to research that with you and move forward.
Awesome, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lots of kudos to give around today here. Want to first thank Chief Wallace and all of you for all the work that you're doing. I have to say, on the permit side, I've gotten like 1 complaint in the last 3 months about permits and the sprinklers and fire reviews and all of that. And when in the rare occasion that we're getting them, it's usually not your fault. So I really, really appreciate the dedication of figuring out the problem and solving the problem. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I mean, again, we can just tell because we're getting fewer complaints. And I don't think that's because there's workarounds. I think that you're actually solving the problem. So I very much appreciate it. Also, I got the chance last week to spend some time with 911, and that was a really great visit. I got to see their new technology for translation services, so that when there is an emergency call from somebody who speaks a different language, that they're able to respond immediately, even if they don't have somebody speaking the language. I was very impressed by that, and really impressed by the continuation of 911, really, again, trying to figure out the problem, the solution to this problem of, or this challenge of, we've got so many more people that are speaking different languages that we want to be able to serve them right away and not just connect to language line, which could take a while. So the 911 text feature and then the talking to text feature that I saw the other day was really, really spectacular. So thank you very much for continuing to think through how best to serve every single resident in our city, because they deserve the first-class service that everybody else is getting. So I very much appreciate that. In that same line, and I'll ask this question and then I have some data requests, but on the ground, I'm not seeing it as much in my district, but I would imagine Councilman Parker's seeing it in his. But I do think that it's happening. I want to make sure that on the ground, we have somebody speaking who can speak other languages, or at least that there's some connection, whether they're using the text feature or whether some of our firefighters are learning basic Spanish to tell people what's going on, or even hiring more Spanish speakers and multilingual folks to be able to, because when you're on the fire ground, a lot of times firefighters aren't really talking with the constituent, but sometimes you have to. And so I want to just make sure that we're still able to confer, to be able to have that conversation when we're actually on the ground.
Thank you for your question, Councilwoman. The answer to that is there's several points that I want to bring up here. First of all, we do have the language line, and a lot of our people are very frequently, they use the Google language app to be able to interact with people. But we have an extensive amount of people that speak many different languages in the fire department, that really help with that. I can tell you when we had the big BG&E explosion back Christmas a few years ago, a young lady was fluent in Spanish and actually saved me, because everyone that came off of that building were Spanish speakers. And she actually was able to partner with me to be able to go through the triage treatment and get people out of there. So we do have several of them. We do have several multi-language speakers that go out with our outreach that do not only hand CPR, but we do Spanish speaking hands only CPR in different languages. So there's several options out there that we have.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had made a request for some very specific translators or some first responders to be in the department. So I look forward to talking with you more about that. I want to go back to the conversation we were having about the tech and the battalion tech, and so I was at a fire where one of my officers who was at Engine 31 is now at another engine. I happened to see her at this fire, and she said that she was training for the tech position. And so it's my understanding, if I understood the previous conversation, is that she would be chosen one day. She goes in for a regular job. She, I won't give specifics, but within the fire department, and then a battalion chief might say, I need a tech today. She'll go with that tech or with that battalion for the day, get paid her regular salary, is that right? Of what she is, what at that point, and then her position has to be backfilled for the day, and that's where the overtime is, but she would still get paid the same rate that she's always getting paid, even though she's taking on that tech position. Is that how that works? I just want to be clear about that, the earlier conversation that we were having.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair and the council. Assistant Chief John Hyde. Councilwoman, that's accurate, and it's a really, really good program because it's a mentorship too for someone that is starting at a lower level, whether it's a firefighter, an EVD, a lieutenant, to get that natural progression into that command structure. So that's why a lot of people do the approval process. We just recently redid the entire approval process where they go out to the fire academy and get approved by the academy staff, along with that gets put on their telestaff profile. So I know the member you're speaking of, and again, it's a great avenue for younger lieutenants and younger members to get mentored by a chief and see the progression of where they need to go, and it gives them a lot of reps.
Yeah, she seemed to really, enjoy the challenge. Obviously, you know who I'm talking about. So I think that so that is another avenue, and I think that that makes sense. I do think that, to the council president's point, at some point we need to think about how that gets expanded, how it gets more permanent. But I do think that, at least for now, that seems to work, pretty well. So I very much appreciate that. I just wanted to confirm there. And Madam Chair, I have two data requests that are not related. One is we haven't had an oversight hearing for fire in a while. And so I'm just going to make my regular data request that I always make every time we have that hearing. I would love to have the codex removal data from first quarter this year. I think you probably already have it. And then first quarter of the calendar year, so that's third quarter of the fiscal year. And that helps us with understanding year by year at the same point in time how we're doing on making sure that when we're taking out the red diamond, that the house that's rehabbed actually has permits or has proper permits, because sometimes we're seeing that the red diamond comes down, but you all don't know that there's been permits or not. So I like to look at that data. So it's the codex removal data. Tony knows this because I do it all the time for the public safety. For the first quarter of the calendar year and the last quarter of the calendar year last year. And then a new request is, Chief, we've had a lot of conversations about this. I would really like the data that the fire department has, however you collect it, whether it's through your proactive putting up the fire alarms or answering calls related to hoarding. And I'm really concerned about this for lots of reasons. I've said it publicly already. I've had every intention to continue my work on getting a way to address this issue with a public health lens. I just haven't done it yet. So I would love to have the data from calendar year 25 and first quarter 26, just list of addresses. I don't need names. I can figure that part out, but that would be super helpful to understand kind of what we're dealing with here.
So just a question and response for the first data request. Do you want just the numbers that are returned from Codex designation?
No, list
or you
of
want
addresses.
the addresses? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell you off the top of my head with regard to the hoarding conditions, we're right around 252 addresses right now that we're aware of. And that's new data. That's clean as of today.
I mean, that's significant, honestly, and I think it's an undercount, as you probably can imagine, but it gives us a good foundation for what we're dealing with, so I appreciate it. And yes, I need the list of addresses. That will be super helpful as we move forward on this work. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, team, good to see y'all. Thanks for pulling the guy out of the harbor this afternoon. That little area right behind the power plant might actually be a good spot for rails, to be honest. I want to go back to the number. I was going to follow up on Councilman Parker's plans review question. Deputy Chief Hanlon had, I think the number was 3,474 plans reviews completed year to date for the fiscal year. That's like twice what I'm looking at. So let me start. Is this an apples to apples comparison with the output performance measure in section 611 titled number of plans review?
Thank you for that question. Yes, sir, it is. What we were able to leverage is the data coming out of Acela and Project Docs, which gives us a much cleaner look at our data. So what we can see there is the number of times that each reviewer has reviewed the plan. So that gives us a cleaner, more accurate view, and that's why you see that increase.
Okay, got you. So is your sense that pre-Acela, because the data was harder to compile or whatever, if you had multiple passes at a specific plan, you might have undercounted that?
Yeah, it was a lot of manual tabulation in that data before.
Gotcha. So a lot of like sticky notes on computer screens across the fire marshal's office type of thing?
Not that basic, but it was manual tabulation.
All right, thank you for taking that question seriously. Okay, so it is helpful to know that my first thought was, wait, how are we almost doubling it year to year? So it sounds like making progress, but it is not exactly the same thing that we're looking at. Can you talk through when you mentioned that we onboarded both the plans manager and the plans reviewer? You talk me through the process of me as someone who's trying to, I am trying to convert a property from a commercial office space to a chiropractor space, and because of the building code, now I've got to put in a sprinkler system, right? Like, so I've got to go through this whole plan review process. How does having the plans manager and the plans reviewer, like, how does that make my life better?
Before I defer back to Chief Hamlin and Chief Eames, they're more boots on the ground and more involved with the process. From a high view, that manager and that plans reviewer not only adds in oversight, but they add in capability, right? So instead of us having a limited amount of plans reviewer, they add in capacity. So that capacity then adds into customer service and quality of that customer service output. So Chief Hamlin, if you want to kind of, talk a little bit more into detail about that process.
Good evening, Madam Chair and council members. So the oversight was, we put in was the life of the city is by the amount of plans that come through. So we noticed that there were more plans coming through, more inspections that we're having. So with the oversight of having a plans manager and a plans reviewer, somebody has their thumb on it, they can manage it. With Chief Eames' oversight, we can see exactly where the hang-ups are, the hookups are. What Chief Wallace mentioned earlier of getting that office specialist at the front that can get those phone calls, say, hey, here's your plans person, here's their manager, here are their phone numbers. So with all of those in place, hopefully we can get it cleaned up where we can stop some of the hiccups that people think they're seeing.
Okay, thank you. And then for my second question, and I missed the very first part of the hearing, but going back to Chief Wallace, I think you had said that we're down to like three. Is it three open pins, or some very very small number like this?
So at the EMT firefighter level, which is the ground level, entry level position for the fire department, yes. And they're only there because the class that's at the academy now had pretty much been closed, right? It had gone through the process. Those vacancies popped up, or if they had popped up sooner, we'd be at 48.
Good. Okay. Can you talk me through where the demand for overtime will come from in this next year, now that we're right at these staffing levels, and how well this budget is predicting that overtime demand?
So I'll start by talking you through where it's coming from. Understand that operationally on a day-to-day basis, we have to start our day with approximately 307 people in the field. That includes fire and EMS. If we know that right now with the way the vacation schedule runs for personnel, we could potentially have up to about 20% that could be off that day on permission leave, vacation, holiday, comp time, PL time. We also know that, and I'll use today as an example, I had 19 people off this morning at 0700 hours just for either sick or injury, whether it's line of duty, non-line of duty, I don't know, but I had those people off. So I have two choices at that point. I fill those positions, I hire back on overtime, or I take that total number of people off, I divide that by 4. That number is going to be how many units are placed out of service. So if I looked at just the 19 people that were on some type of medical leave for today, I would have been down 5 engines today. So that's, a lot of that is there. We, in one of the previous budget committee meetings with the chairwoman, we presented this year a breakdown of exactly where the overtime is actually used. And, I think that gave, I know that when we started doing that a couple of months ago, that gave us a really good idea of what FLSA costs, what vacation costs us. There are some contractual overtime requirements that are embedded within the labor union MOUs, where if they're working certain days, they're automatically paid overtime. So that's, I think the most appropriate answer would be for us to update that graph that we built and actually show you where we are. That is probably about a month old right now.
Okay, and thank you, Chief. Follow up to that, and probably just a clearer version of the question. Presumably, what you just explained is probably pretty normal, and we can extrapolate that out for FY27, right? So do we anticipate the demand for overtime? Like, is the demand for overtime budgeted for FY27? Do you expect that to be pretty close to accurate, or do you expect us to see like a supplemental ask later in the fiscal year?
I can't predict whether or not there's going to be a supplemental ask. What I can say is as we have upstaffed a couple of months ago, we ran an analysis and we looked at hours. That's really the quickest way for me to kind of get a snapshot of where we are. Hourly comparison over any given time, any moment in time. Where are we now? Where were we last year? We were approximately 10% down in hours from where we were last year. So I think that...
Meaning 10% less overtime hours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that was, I want to say that was towards the beginning or towards the beginning of the third quarter. So we had actually seen those numbers come down. I think that, when we look at what we're going to be doing, some of the references with the 10-year plan and things like that, I think that we can begin to transition and build in more staff. But in order to shut that down to where it would go net zero, it's going to be a massive hiring. I estimate that could be well over 160, maybe 170 people at one time. So, that's obviously not a place that we're in now, but I do believe, and last year's budget director told this committee that she had thought at the time it had kind of spiked, it was going to somewhat plateau, then it should start working down. I believe, just by looking at the hours, right, I believe we're either at that plateau or we're starting that trend downward.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yeah, my question is not about getting rid of overtime. It's about being able to accurately predict it when we're going through the budgeting process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first thank and appreciate my colleagues for lifting up the importance of permitting. And I'm going to concur with some of what I heard, which is I have heard improvements within the fire department. Overall, I still think we have massive challenges related to fast and reliable permitting in Baltimore. But I will note that I think there has been improvement and there is still a ways to go within Baltimore City Fire. So appreciate colleagues lifting that up and appreciate the work that you all have done to make improvements. I'm going to pick up where Councilman Blanchard left off and ask what I think he was driving at in a slightly more pointed and direct manner, which is we had a conversation in this committee a few weeks ago about overtime and vacancies, and just concern that the council has had about making sure our budgets are accurate. We understand that firefighting is hard. I heard you walk us through the explanation around when you need to, when you have folks that are off for either health or sick or whatever the case may be and needing to backfill and move folks around, and that is going to require some OT. I think what remains a concern for this council, though, is we want to get to a place where when we sign the budget, that's the budget. Whether you're police, fire, the Department of Public Works, or the BDC, that's it. And so my question, and I asked this to both you and Mr. Worley a couple weeks ago, but are you going to need additional overtime based on your current projections beyond what is allocated in this budget book right here? Is the expectation that this council is going to be asked yet again to sign a supplemental to support more money beyond what we are currently negotiating in this budget?
So I think the answer is I can't accurately predict whether or not I'm going to have to do that. As a public safety 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service, we know. So I like to classify things as predictable and no notice, right? We know when we have, I can give you an example right now. We know that we are going to have a significant event at the end of June. Sale 250. It's a massive event. It's going to require me to staff that event with overtime. There are some requirements there that are FAA driven. There are some needs that, given the time of year, we've got to make sure we've got a paramedic force out there. That's going to be overtime. What I can't tell, and oftentimes, while this is not frequent, oftentimes this can become significant, are those no-notice events. A major storm that might drive me bringing in a lot of people to work for several days. The Key Bridge didn't drive something like that. Woodbury did, where we had a lot of people in and we had to dedicate an awful lot of time out there to not only fire suppression, but cleanup. That's what makes my ability to give you an honest answer, that makes that tough for me. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I can't see into the future with especially the way that we're tracking our overtime now. We know when our vacations are going to, at least we know when vacations can be taken. We know our FLSA impact with our EMS providers. We can average what's been sick, non-line of duty, sick line of duty, and we're actively working with the unions right now to put in an MLAC policy for non-line of duty leave abuse. So we're doing a lot.
I'm sorry, Chief, MLAC, could you explain the terminology?
Medical leave abuse. It's a medical leave abuse protocol is what we're putting in. So what that'll do is and it's still in negotiations, but there's some guardrails there with regard to type and frequency of non-medical leave. It's still in negotiations, so I can't dive real deep on it, but what I'm trying to articulate is the willingness of not only the department, but the union to try to work and with some of these policies, which will bring that overtime down. So I am no way trying to be disrespectful or evasive. We're working as hard as we can on this. I cannot tell you that won't happen again.
Chief, I always appreciate your candor and honesty. You will not find 15 bigger advocates for public safety in the city of Baltimore than the members of this council. And again, I fully appreciate the complexity of a 24-hour big city. You are literally putting out fires at all times. And there are some events, Sale 250, Woodbury, Key Bridge, that are just going to require more. But we're also fiduciaries of the taxpayer dollar. So again, it remains a deep concern for myself, this committee, and this entire council that year after year, we pass budgets and then are asked to paper over supplementals on overtime. It cannot, and I appreciate the MLAC piece, it cannot become part of the culture and custom of being in the fire department that part of how you make this work is through overtime. And I hear that from some members. We need salaries that pay people a good and just wage. I know there's been a lot of negotiations, a really strong contract with the unions recently. Good work by all involved. But again, I will just express a good deal of frustration that public safety becomes a reason for us to not put a limit on spending within an agency and overtime. And so again, I appreciate sincerely your candor, your honesty, your leadership, what the women and men of this department do. I will again state, I think we have the best fire department in America, but it is of extreme concern from a fiscal management perspective that year over year, we are signing budgets with an expectation that agencies are going to exceed that budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, can I provide some additional context here? So in last year's budget, and the team can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we budgeted about 14, or this current year's current fiscal year, we budgeted about $14 million in overtime. This year's budget for the fire department's overtime is $38 million. And to the chief's comments, and then the chief's comments about what the former budget director talked about with this committee last year, and what the current interim budget director and I were talking about. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna continue to do some analysis, because I think this goes back to Councilmember Blanchard's point about there was a point where we had a large number of vacancies within the fire department, right? So that meant that we had to provide that, we had to backfill, we had to provide that service off of overtime. Now that we're at the point, especially in suppression, of being fully staffed, the expectation would be that you would see less overtime because you were fully staffed. And so that's why we have to continue to do our analysis, because a part of our thought process over the past couple of budgets is we're starting to fill positions, therefore we don't need to do additional and overtime. We're seeing the hours go down, but we're not, and obviously the cost of the overtime is higher because of contracts and things of that nature. So there's additional modeling that we're gonna be doing within the finance department to better understand when we're gonna get to that evening out point. But what you have here is more than double what the overtime budget was for the prior fiscal year. So we're gonna be at about this is gonna be about $38 million. I asked the budget team earlier for the projection for this year, and I think, and the fire chief might know, 46 or 40, it's in the 40s millions. But then again, remember I talked about those other interventions. It's kind of like we have to kind of see how the interventions play out, and if it results in, the lower overtime like we believe it will. So we talked about, now we funded the battalion techs, right? So that money is in here. So we should see that drop down. We also funded the ambulatory. That should drop down as well. We created those trainee positions. I think that's worth about two or $2.5 million, right? So again, what we've done in this year's budget is it's more than a best guess. I mean, this is, our fiscal analysis saying with these interventions, we think we can drive it down. But again, some of it is going to be seeing how the costs actualize over time. And then also, we were just talking about with the data that the chief was talking about, right? With the folks that are out on leave and out on sick leave, right? We have to kind of look at the daily staffing numbers too, to really do an intelligent projection. But again, what I just want you all to be confident in is that what we have done here is not intentionally underfund overtime. We've increased it dramatically in this year's budget while we continue to see how the interventions play out to get to a point where we're really comfortable that the overtime number is accurate based off of the positions that we have. So hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that context. So last year, as you mentioned, I think you put 13 million into the book, and the department ended up spending 45 million, which is, I'm not good at math, but over 3 times higher than was projected. That was 705,000 hours of overtime within this department. I appreciate the 38 in this year. It is probably more honest and accurate, closer to what the actual number will be. I think to your point, Madam CA, I think we get to a place where the overall number needs to go down. If we are staffed up appropriately, we can't continue to justify tens of millions of dollars in overtime spending. And so what I will simply say, and I appreciate the more honest, at least the 38 is in the book versus the 13, is it is going to be challenging to continue to support supplementals year over year over year when we just keep having the same conversation. So I appreciate that this feels more, I see the movement in the direction. I'm really hoping that that 38 number is close to accurate.
Do we have a total, the last chart that we got was year-to-date up to May the 5th. Do we have an updated number for up to today?
We don't have
like
that.
Year-to-date right now?
We don't have that with us, but we can certainly supply that.
Okay, can you get that to us? Because our last number was roughly what, year-to-date was roughly just under 45 million.
Yep.
As of May 5th.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing that I just want to know is that we're constantly, Chief, hit when we're talking about overtime, where our public safety agencies come in and they talk about events. And I just want to say, looking at your pie chart, which was very helpful for me, we talk about SAIL 250, your events in SOC, it's $215,000 in overtime. So that's not what's going to move the number. That's not what's going to move the number for us. When we look at vacation and holiday backfill and it's at $20 million, then you say, hey, but we got SAIL 250 in front of us, So I'm going to stop there. We appreciate, as a council, we appreciate you all adding the additional funding for overtime. Actually, it's something that we asked for. And you guys are making huge progress. So I'll just say we appreciate that.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I did not want to infer, and if I did, I apologize, that those numbers they're massive numbers, right? What I want to infer is we go as granular as possible trying to track all the special events. The other thing that we track is overtime that's grant funded. A significant amount of the training that Chief Shallow does that we've talked about earlier is straight grant fund, that overtime. So we have that. We've got work through the Fire Marshal's office. We have MOUs with the Maryland Stadium Authority. A lot of that is reimbursed. We still show it as overtime, but we also do our best to track where things are reimbursed. I'm trying to get us as granular as possible. So reference being made to special events was simply an example of how granular we do try to go.
No, I got you. You guys went very granular in the pie chart. Where I want you to go granular is at the top, where the big money is. Because where Chief Shallow is right above the events in SOC. She had.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to talk about what's driving it. And we know that's the vacation, holiday backfill, that's the non-LOD sick. There's a lot of stuff that just got to do with union contracts. I say we should just call a thing a thing. If it's union contracts, let's just say it's union contracts. Let's just say it's in negotiations. I'm going to move. I'm going to move on. It's not hard for you guys to pull that year-to-date information, right? Can you give it to me in 2 days?
Let's say can we have the end of next week on that?
The end of next week? Jeez.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I feel like I'm too easy tonight. Okay.
Well,
okay.
I tell my team all the time, timeliness and accuracy. I want to make sure we give you the accurate data.
You got it. I'm going to get to my question. I think it might be around service 609. I'm not 100%. We're talking about the population health. The population health targets. I'm trying to figure out why I guess I just need an understanding about why is the FY27 population health outreach targets only 1,200 when FY25 actuals was 2,150. FY24 actual was 9,433. I guess I'm trying to see, was FY24 an anomaly? Was like an actual operational capacity that happened there? But why are we setting such a target below recent actual performance?
So, thank you for your question, Madam Chair. When we started population health, it was a little over 2 years, right about 2 years ago, we didn't really know. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know what number we're. We've had a lot of success with that unit and their outreach. Those numbers probably have to be bumped up. But what we do find is that their ability to outreach, I mean, I'll look real quick at the numbers and just tell you from the latest numbers I just have from population health. Year to date on population health, so that's been since inception, they've actually contacted and outreached over 24,000 people. That's great. For one unit alone, it's going out on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, and rotating through the city. In April alone, they were able to outreach 652 people. In May, we're up to 804. So as the weather gets warmer, it's easier to get more people. Part of that, when they get out there, is they build relationships. They're able to actually make a difference with people and get people in care treatment. They've also been able to induce people with buprenorphine if they want to work with some substance use disorder treatment. In terms of the numbers, in terms of kits, they've actually given out over 23,000 naloxone kits, which is about 46,000 doses of Narcan. They've done a great job of getting out there and meeting people. We track extensively the amount of things that the unit does. Everything from contacts to follow-up with patients, healthcare training events. They also do some extensive leave behind. In FY26 alone, just in this fiscal year alone, they've actually been able to outreach a little over 7,500 people, and they've left right about 14,000 doses of Narcan. They also leave supplies behind when that crews go out. They leave safe syringe strip programs, safe syringe program kits, fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips, wound care kits. They've actually, just this fiscal year alone, they've left over 1,800 wound care kits behind. Because many people that suffer from substance use disorder, they have horrific wounds. So they work with that as well.
So why isn't that reflected? Obviously, our performance metrics are low in some categories, and that may actually be the case because I'm seeing something similar with the Narcan leave behinds, which you just talked about within our numbers. So why are our target numbers so low when we can clearly hit them and exceed them?
The targets need to be readjusted to where we're at. The problem is we had to trend it out and see where we were at with that. We've had a lot of success. I will be honest, in terms of Narcan distribution, naloxone distribution, we're pretty flush. We do a significant amount of Narcan kits as well as doses that hit the street. I see myself when I'm around, it's out there a lot. Well, as evidenced by the efforts of that unit though, we've actually seen about a 28% reduction in calls for people that are overdosed. That doesn't mean that the people aren't overdosing, they're not treating each other. What it means is they're treating each other, and we have to be able to go to the next step where that pop health, community health unit, they're building relationships, and when people are ready for treatment and for the next step, we're there to bridge the gap.
Usually Councilwoman Ramos is our details person in the budget, but I would like to see it updated. Mm-hmm. If it's a win, then it should be reflected within the budget books. The one of the things I did want to know, and I guess this would be my second question, do you guys have a high utilizer EMS list? I saw you nodding, so since you do.
I'll start. The answer is yes, ma'am.
How many people on it? How many people we have for repeated EMS calls?
We started with, what, the top 200? Yeah, we look at the utilizers, but we also look at a lot of the comorbidities with use. So you may not necessarily see us report out on these constant opioid overdoses, but there's a lot of the comorbidities that are caused by the actual, the illness itself. And Chief Metz has got it in front of him. He could probably go a little bit deeper if you want.
High utilizer, super user, loyal customer, whatever you want to call it. We've been doing this for a long time. We actually go way back into about 2015. They actually started a grant, it probably predates a lot of you all here, where we actually had a grant, and what they wanted us to do was to target the top 25 super users back in, I guess, early teens. And we did a really good job, because at that time, we found Miss Jones, who was a diabetic and didn't have a machine or didn't have strips, which was an easy fix. Well, guess what? We did a really good job with that 25, and they said, well, we'll do 50. So we kept doing it. Well, what's happened over those years is that super user population has really transformed. In the beginning, it was really a lot of problems with, like, durable medical equipment and getting people linked into care. What's happened now is a lot of our super users, they suffer from a trifecta of problems with either homelessness, substance use disorder, mental health is in there as well. And people that have these kind of problems also have something called comorbid problems. When you're using substance use disorder, you're going to have some other medical problems that go along with it. We started tracking this really closely, and what we found, we do a 3-month list when we do it. We actually found from January through March, we had 295 super users. Just 12 of those super users accounted for 403 individual calls. Ambulance transports. And then what we do is we actually get granular and figure out where those patients found, what zip codes, what is their primary concerns, what is the percent of those patients that would be homeless or without housing. We found that our most common destination in this particular report were Mercy, Johns Hopkins, and University of Maryland. The most prevalent zip code of people that are super users is 21202. And of that group, 63 were a yes for homelessness, no was 195, and unknown was 37. So we get really granular. We actually started a super user work group, I don't know, within the last 2 or 3 months we started with that, because the fire department, if we're with those people, there's been a failure somewhere. They're calling us to take them to the hospital, and there's a lot more problems than just us. So we started with a work group. We brought partners from the health department, MOHS, the law department, because one of the problems, mayor's offices as well. Yeah, one of the problems we have is a lot of that data usage. There's a lot of laws that prevent us from going freely back and forth with data. When we were researching population health and outreach to super user populations, we actually went to Fort Worth, Texas, and they were so refined out there, they actually have meetings with groups from all over, and they'll say, I have a patient, Jane Doe, that has this problem, and I can't help her. Who in the room can help her? We're not at that level yet. What we're trying to get to that level where we're sharing and not working in silos, that MOHS isn't working in their silo, health isn't working in theirs, and the fire department isn't working in theirs. So we're trying to lower those barriers and be able to work as a group to collectively address that problem. So it's a work in progress. We've had some success, but yes, we do closely track it.
You have a lot of information. Do you have the percentage of the high utilizers that are being connected to services, that you have connected to services? I don't know a certain timeline to ask, well, maybe I'll just say like the last 2 years. It's not particularly a committee request, or do you have anything year to date for a percentage of folks that you guys have connected?
We have that, but that's going to take a little while for us to put that together. I swear I'm not being like Chief Wiles, but
Okay.
I'll probably need 30 days to do that.
I'm
We
gonna
do
give you
track that
28.
closely.
I'm gonna give you 28 days.
28 days, okay. But Yeah, it's going to take a little while to put that together, but we do track it. The other thing to remember with the super user or high utilizer, or whatever you want to call them, loyal customer, is a lot of times people come in and out of super user status. Sometimes people have a problem or something's going on and they use a lot, and then all of a sudden they'll disappear. They could be incarcerated, they could be hospitalized.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of reasons. So those lists go kind of wavy. They go up and down with those people. But we tend to find the same people. The other thing that amazes me is the hospitals will, now with the addition of Chris, we don't, like University of Maryland may say, wow, this guy, Councilman Gray, came in here 25 times. They can't see the other 75 times that he went to the other places. So, yeah, 22, right, I got it. So anyhow, we've lowered a lot of those barriers with a lot of information sharing and CRISP. We can see a lot of that now, but we're trying to do a better job. We got to link people to services. We got to work with our hospital partners for this as well. So that's kind of where we're headed.
I'm glad to hear that there's a working group because, look, at the end of the day, it's some other agencies. I'm glad that you guys are working together, is what I'll say. We want to make sure that we're able to service calls the right way, especially when we have the information. So I do have you down a date for Tony. It's 28 days. 28 days. Instead of 30, I can't keep giving you guys the number that you're asking for. So I'm going to, and thank you for the information. I'm going to go to Councilman Gray at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to quickly follow up on what we just talked about previously with my round of questioning with the ALS medic units downgrading to the BLS. And I do appreciate the flexibility it's able to give you. We're not losing any staff. And you guys are actually able to be more responsive to like critical incidents. I want to switch the focus to the constituent. What does this change mean to the constituent, if any, when a Baltimore City Fire EMS vehicle come and pick you up versus the AMR? And I'm asking, like, price-wise, is it more expensive? Do they accept the same like insurance? Do they charge more per mile? And then consequently, instead of going to, say Agnes or any other medical facility, instead of if they're going to urgent care or another place, is that more expensive for the constituent? Because I do understand that it makes us more flexible, but I also want to make sure that the offset of that isn't a more expensive experience for the constituent.
The short answer is no. It is not more expensive for a constituent. The way it works is we contract with them. We do billing just like we do any other time. They work underneath our umbrella. We bill like we do every other day. The rates are the same, the transport. In terms of where they go with services, the nurse navigation line through AMR, they work out arrangements with who accepts what kind of insurance, and they take them to the appropriate place. A lot of those places don't require any kind of insurance either. So there's no change in costs. There's no extra cost to constituents. That was heavily researched before we even rolled the program out.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then I think for my last question of the night, hopefully, let's see. It's about fire investigations. I know we talked a little bit about that offline, but I wanted to kind of explore more and talk about Austin investigations for a second to see if your investigations and your prosecutions have led to anyone being added to the Austin offender registry, and are there any alarming trends that you're seeing when it comes to arson that we should know or be aware of as a council, but not necessarily, sharing anything that's too highly sensitive?
I'll start with the last part of that, then I'll push it over to Chief White or Chief Hamlin. We're constantly looking at our structure fires from multiple angles. We look at time of day, we look at location, we look at structure type, we look at occupancy type, we look at who owns it, we look at who insures it, we look at recent transactions where, and I'll focus right now on either codex and or vacants. We'll look at recent sales. We will step out of the immediate area where that fire occurred, and we'll look at other comparable areas to see if there's other owners in that area that have had fires as well, or if that same owner has had fires around the city in other areas. Without diving too deep in it, I can tell you that it's led to some investigations that are still working right now. I think where we're very, very fortunate, not only as a department, but as a city, is the cooperative effort between our FIB and BPD Arson and their ability, meaning our FIB people, to pull the state fire marshal's office or the ATF in right away if conditions warrant. So they have a fire investigation task force. They meet once a week. They've even embedded the state's attorney's office in it now with special prosecutors for this. So we have been extraordinarily proactive with that. Yes, we do see trends. Yes, we do track trends, but we also go, again, to my point earlier with Madam Chair, we go real granular in a lot of these investigations, and I think that you see some of the results that we've gotten from some of the things we've done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just to add to the conversation, what we have seen so far this year is 52 arsons, and that's down from 215 for last fiscal year. So what I would tout that is the cooperation between BCFD and BPD arson. So we are seeing that decrease in arson, fires being ruled arson. And I'll let Chief Hamler add any additional details.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. So what we find is working along with police arson, we go in as fire investigators, and we are able to label the causation at 51%. At that point, we go along with the investigation to assist BC, the police department arson, and that they actually go in and do the arson work. We just want to make sure that we can get the causation point of origin so that we can make sure that we're labeling this. And we do the tracking through doing the permits. We go back and we look at who owned the property, as Chief Wallace said. Are there any trends that we see, certain neighborhoods, how many, what times of day, times of season, and then we'll try to track all that information, working along with BC Police Department Arson to get the information in.
Thank you for the answer. And just as a quick follow-up, could you talk about when there is a fire, and I think we talked about this a little bit, and I don't know if you can go into detail about the specific thing we talked about in a certain area. When there's a fire, outside of the fire, are you or any of the battalion chiefs trained on looking and assessing the area around you to see what additional support that area may need? So there's a fire, but you also see there's illegal dumping, or there's something that could actually aid in the fire even being worse. And then how are you working, coordinating with the agencies as a response to what you're seeing in real time in a certain area? And it kind of just speaks to the collaboration that, the city is working on more and more between the agencies and departments to just be just better.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think the answer to that is we try to be proactive. We actually try to be before the fire. So when they're out doing neighborhood sweeps, there's a lot of things that we see. We may see the illegal dumping. They may pick up on what we call illegal hookups. We see a lot of those when we're canvassing neighborhoods, especially when we're doing like codex searches and things like that. We've gotten very good at spotting, illegal electrical, theft really from either from the power line or another house. So they do report a lot of that. The squatter initiative that Chief Ide led last year led to the development of an app, right, where that could be reported. So my answer to that is yes.
And the hoarders as well.
The hoarding?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You can talk about that.
So that is that's a combined effort. We have two sources to actually show us that. We may notice that inside a home during a home visit, a smoke alarm inspection. We are more likely to notify or to notice it and identify it during an EMS engagement. So our personnel are likely somewhat deeper into the home. And, when we do neighborhood sweeps, we do talk about that. We talk about the dangers. We do not want to stereotype anybody, right? But if the condition is to the point where it may have blocked a second exit from the home out the back door, that's something we may try to indirectly address. But then they have the ability to pass that on. And I know Councilwoman Ramos, we've been working on bouncing some ideas around about how we may be able to, quote unquote, task force that a little bit, just to get some thoughts and, we don't want to penalize or stereotype, we want to help. And so that's where that's leading. But I do believe that we're very good in our observations. We see a lot of things and we do report a lot of things.
Thank you. My time optimism has got the best of me. So this is our last round. What I would just ask is just put your best questions forward for our agencies if we can be concise and comprehensive with our responses at this time. Thank you. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick thank you. You all had a really great response in a really complicated situation at Eastern Avenue and Crescent Street, adjacent to Crown Court and Seal, the other week. And so really grateful to the great response there and on all the excellent work. And also it was fantastic. So thank you, Chief, for showing me the battalion techs in action there and getting a real sense of what that looks like on the scene. So the question I have goes back to, and we had a similar conversation with DPW and with Madam City Administrator yesterday. And so just wanted to follow up here with you all too. We've often experienced there's a gap for various reasons between when a property is open to casual entry and is reported as such, whether it's by a resident calling it in for an inspection by housing, or whether it's originated from one of our public service agencies. So oftentimes the police, after they've cleared squatters out, we just mentioned the squatter initiative a moment ago. But then also, we're often in a situation where securing a property is really critically important in the immediate aftermath of a fire, as opposed to a kind of a long-standing vacant situation. I know oftentimes the responsibility rests with the property owner, right? And oftentimes it's a contractor who's comes out at the request of the owner and or an insurance company, things like that. But we often have properties where the ownership isn't clear, the owner's out of town, we're not able to contact someone right away. Or it's the ownership with something that there may not be an owner to the property. What's the protocol for, as we're wrapping up a fire scene, what's the protocol to initiate a securing of the property if there isn't a responsible party in terms of ownership who's taking care of that? There's all kinds of reasons, obviously, safety-wise, why that's critically important. Oftentimes, there's a number of possessions because many times these are occupied properties, and there's a real risk of theft, as well as the risk of people entering into a scene that may be still under fire investigation, or a scene that's just simply dangerous because there's structural problems with the property now that it's been burned. So, what's that protocol look like? And I guess the follow-up would be other ways for us to move that along more quickly.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. There's two different parts to it. One being vacant, unoccupied. Our incident commanders, typically what they'll do is they'll make a request through DPW to have it boarded at the time that they're clearing the scene, and make that request through the CAD system, which goes over to the DPW. And then what we do, we evaluate that within a 3-day period to make sure that they actually did the board up request. So we do have that in our protocols. And what we do, we find out a lot of times that, for the vacants and the codex, it could be breached. And again, we'll put in another service request, but this is where the clearboarding that the mayor's office is starting to do now is coming into play. And we'll see how that works and see if it can be breached similar to the plywood. Next would be the occupied dwellings. We request police services to help secure the dwelling, knowing that we can only do so much, but our truck companies carry close-up kits, and they'll close up by putting screws in the doors, plastic over the windows, and we rely on them to, patrol and, make sure that our close-up kit does not get breached or impinged upon by someone that wants to get in. So we basically have two protocols, but definitely the vacants and code X-rays, and even if it's occupied, we do those checks. If we do request board up, we'll go back and follow up and make sure that it was done.
No, thank you very much for the explanation. The standard protocols to file with a vacant unoccupied property is following up after 3 days. And then are you able to say, what's the rate? So I understand that there's three different outcomes. One is it was boarded and it remains secured. One is it was boarded up by DPW and is unsecured. And one is it just hadn't been boarded yet because it just hadn't gotten to. Maybe there's another outcome, but those are the three that I can imagine at the moment. Are you able to report over the last year what percentage of those outcomes did you find after 3 days?
I don't have accurate numbers on that, but we could probably gather that information. I will tell you that we very often don't find a positive outcome with it being boarded. What we find a lot of times is it's been breached after we leave, and we capture that by our home safety inspections and our community engagement on our daily inspections. So I would say the number is high because the departments are doing the boarding, and I don't know that we would let it go if we found it unboarded, where we put another request in and go back and check again. That's very often, other than it being breached outside of them boarding that property up.
Madam Chair, could I make an official committee request then for the agency to generate, let's say just for fiscal year 25, so not the current year, but for FY25, what the stats are for the various outcomes at that 3-day inspection?
Yes, sir. We can get you our board up numbers. Chief, I'm not sure 100% tracking wise after the first request and then the second request, but I'll definitely work with you to get what you're looking for.
Great, and a month is fine for that. This isn't,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I neglected to give a timeline for my last two data requests. I think you normally generate them for me in a couple weeks, right? So, 2 weeks for those. I'm going to add to that list. Again, normally when we have our oversight hearings, you also give us just broad numbers per quarter of the types of fires. So not types of fires, but the buildings that they were in. So what's occupied, what's Codex, and what's vacant. As you know, I try to monitor, and in my discussion about vacant properties, I'm always saying, well, a third of our fires are vacant property fires, which is a fact. And I want to make sure that I'm still saying fact because those are really, really important points for us to be able to continue to make. Now, as we do clearboarding, those numbers are going to go down if it works the way that we want it to work. But I'm just curious where we are on that. If you have the information now, that's great. Otherwise, I can do a committee request.
Yeah, I can give you what we have real quick. So this is Q1 through 3 of this year. And I'll just say that these numbers are very, very close to where they were last year. So,
okay.
So Codexes were 38 structures, occupied are 303, undetermined or other are 51, known occupied are 20, vacants are 114. That totals 526.
And that's for last.
That's the first 3 quarters of this year. Last year, this year's number is down. In summary, last year this time we were at 563. This year we're down to 526. So to Chief White and Chief Odd's point, where fires are actually down. Arrests are up, fires are down. This is some of the data. 37 codexes this time last year. So,
Right.
you know, we deal with codexes, but they're not the most common structure that
Yeah,
our personnel are fighting fires and it's occupied.
Right. It's the vacants that have EBNs on them that have right. That's how you do that. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. Madam Chair, I meant for that to be a data request, but they gave me the information. I just have a really quick question because I want to make sure everybody's clear. My understanding about the fire suppression company issue is taken care of, where we were going to be down one company per day or something like that. That would have saved us $2 million. My understanding from an announcement from the mayor is that is no longer the case. We are no longer doing that. Is that correct? That's correct? Okay. We've somehow found another $2 million to be able to make that happen. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Blanchard, you're going to close us out.
Oh, pressure's on. I just kind of want to say, I was thinking about this. I really appreciate, I feel like we always have, not always, but we've had some conversations with the fire department that are pretty open conversations about how to do critically important work while also being more cost effective and saving taxpayer dollars to do it. More so than with, I think, any other agency. So I really do appreciate that. And I, testament to a lot of things, but honestly, Chief Wallace's sort of honest leadership is, I think, a big part of that. Can you talk me through, there was the conversation around the pivoting, I think, 4 of the ALSs to BLS. And I think I remember that being a conversation last year as, you know, in line with these of, hey, we have we're sort of overpowered with our response and we can probably reduce this. And can you talk me through, like, how much of that, like how much money was saved and then what that was used to be able to pay for X or Y thing?
Yes, sir. The contract I was talking about earlier regarding the nurse navigation as well as the surge came to right about $7 million. We were allocated 5, so in order to make up that $2 million, I downgraded 4 units. It's actually a little more, but we used roughly $500,000 per downgrade to make up the $2 million. We were very strategic when we picked those units. We didn't put them all in the same area. We put them in between a whole bunch of ALS units to offset that. But we used that as a cost-saving measure to make up the money needed for the contract that we've had a lot of success with.
Okay. Got it. And then second question, kind of similarly, is there an analog from a suppression perspective where there's like heavy suppression and then a lighter suppression and then we are like overpowered, to use a teenager word, but in what we're bringing, like we have more, we're sending more out to fight fires than we need to be in some cases, or is it not really analogous like that?
I think specific to fire suppression, I think that our response patterns and dispatch cards are appropriate. When our box alarms, which we know as box alarms, those are the full assignments for structure fires, they're very appropriate. And the response patterns and the jobs of the individuals that arrive, depending on where they are in those patterns, are scripted. And that's part of what I believe makes us an effective firefighting force is our people know what they're supposed to be doing. They're very good at doing it. They now have an appropriate level of supervision. I don't believe that we over dispatch, even fire alarms. Fire alarms in the middle of the night, you could pull up in front of a place and the lights are off and everyone's asleep. You could also pull up in front of somewhere and the opposite be in effect. So I don't believe across that landscape of fire suppression response that we over dispatch or dedicate resources to incidents.
Yeah, so you're saying you don't see there's not some way to know with that in advance that to send something besides the standard response?
Yeah, you'll hear me talk about the first domino all the time. That's the 911 center, and that's the intel that they're given from the caller. And that can be at either end of the perspective. That intel can be very, very good, very accurate, or it could be completely off base. We've gone to trash can fires that are actually dwellings. We've gone to dwelling fires that are trash cans burning inside of dwellings. So, they have to pull the information from the caller. They've got a script that they follow, and they import that data into CAD. And the best scenario is oftentimes what is sent. They can downgrade, they can upgrade, but it's hard when you're trying to figure that situation out from someone on the other end of the phone. And I give them all the credit in the world. Extrapolating the right information to put into CAD is oftentimes extraordinarily difficult. So, we're dispatched based on what they get and what the system recommends we send.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great night.